Alright, actually before we get going into the game, to show you how to set up the keybinds, what I wanted to talk about is how I've set up mine on my controls. And this will give you of the type of controls that you will need to set up. Um, each pilot in DCS, they don't have to set up controls the same way. It's whatever feels comfortable to you, whatever you want. And as you fly, you're going to um, figure out what things you need to operate, what buttons you need, and you will get a sense of do I want it on my left hand or do I want it on my right hand, um, and what type of button and everything. Yes, there are certain types of controls that should be in certain places, but the sky is the limit. You can do whatever you want essentially, but this is how I did it, and I will go through and I'll tell you what each of these things does real quick and where I placed them. Again, this is just me, my personal preference, and things change all the time as well. And some things I know that are not perfect actually, but anyways, this is how it is. So let's get started. So this is my Gladiator NXT from VKB. This is that $160 stick, right? The one I recommended. So let's hopefully you guys can see my mouse. So we're going to start from the top. So um, at the top we have this what do you call it? This hat, this four-way hat, and that four-way hat, or sorry, it's an eight-way hat, but really it's underused. So it's a stick, and it's also you push it and it becomes buttons. But I only use two buttons, and they're for cockpit zoom in and zoom out. They're right up there on my thumb. It's one of the things I use the most in 2D with Track IR. You always want to zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, because you can't see things, and if you zoom in too much, then you lose situational awareness. So when you're looking at a DDI, for example, a display, you zoom in with this. You would zoom in with this guy and look at things like when you're setting up your weapons, your radar, whatever, right? And then you zoom out. Or if you're trying to look for the boat, you're trying to land on the boat or an airfield, you zoom out of the cockpit, look outside with this. Push forward, zoom in, push out. It's called cockpit zoom in out slow. Okay, very important, and it's up there. The trigger is essentially for um, oh, it's right here. Some of this was I was just like, did I do this correctly? Yeah. Anyways, it's right here. So, the trigger is basically your gun trigger to shoot your cannon or your missiles, right? Some of your missiles, such as air-to-air missiles. I don't have a second detent, just one detent, and that's it. This thing, I'm sure yeah, I don't use that at all. So that's another thing I could use. See, I don't even know. Some things I have on my own stick that I don't use. But trust me, you will eventually end up using all of it. It's just a matter of time. This one on the right is called nose wheel steer undesignate. It's what I use. It's to be able to turn your wheels when you're in a carrier like more, enable high turn rate nose wheel steering, and also to undesignate a target lock when you're in radar, um, and also for taking autopilot off. So it's very important, and it's right there on my index finger on my right. So that's kind of the front there. This is a weapon release. This is for bombs. You want to drop bombs, you click this guy here, big red button. Right here at the top right is the throttle designator control slew hat. So this is a TDC. Essentially, what it is like a mouse pointer. You can think of it. That we will go into when we talk about weapon system, which is probably about 40 lessons from now. So, but that's why this is gonna be just on a need to know basis. You probably don't need to map all of these things at the beginning. What I would suggest is you map as you go, so that you kind of remember. But anyways, this is up, down, left, right, and down, like push down, and it moves the cursor on your screens, right? This one right here is called the sensor control select switch. Actually, I forget to say the SCS. Again, you have up, left, right, down, and this moves. Um, this selects which screen you want to operate with this guy here. So they're right next to each other, and that's what I use. This one is my air-to-air weapons. Forward is gun, back is AMRAM, left is like Sidewinder, right is Sparrow, or whatever, right? That's what I use for weapons, and if I click on it, I can remember what it does. Probably nothing, but you can set that up too. Um, and then, modifiers. We'll get to that. So, well, let me get to that now. So modifier, it's gonna be on my throttle. It's a button, but you can place it anywhere you want. It's basically allows you to double up all of your controls. So if you have, I think this thing has like 24 buttons, right? Now, if I have a modifier, I'll have 48 buttons of the equivalent because let's say here this is a bomb release, and if I click the modifier and click this, actually it ends up being my what do you call that? The launch bar. It's a little thing in front of the wheel that helps you launch from the aircraft carrier. And I bound it, but I actually found that I click it in the cockpit now. I don't even use it, but it just shows you an example, right? So this button can have two functions. One without the modifier, you click the modifier and then it has another one. You can choose as many modifiers as you want. You can have 10 modifiers and this button can do 10 things, which is freaking amazing. Absolutely amazing for DCS to be able to do that. So if you only have 4 buttons, yeah, life's gonna be hard, but with modifiers you might be able to do a bit more. So you don't need like a 24 button joystick, but then you can have 48. So the more the better, right? But at the beginning, you're actually going to get confused. So um, what I would suggest is just start with small button assignments. You learn them really well, so become muscle memory, and then you keep adding to it. So anyways, the modifier for this hat is, for example, my air-to-air radar. I have bound it to push buttons, which you probably don't know what that is right now, but basically it operates the radar, the FLIR, and does all sorts of other things, right? Same thing here. The sensor select, when I click the modifier, it also manages the radar. So you'll notice the radar has a lot of things that you want to bind to your HOTAS so that when you're dogfighting and somebody's shooting at you, you don't have to like take a pause. These three I use for radios, so and the kneeboard. So this guy here is a kneeboard. It pops up a little kneeboard as well, and you can have all the relevant information like like traffic frequencies and stuff like that. This one is my COM2 on the Hornet. So the Hornet has 2 radios. This is the second one. You click on it and it will um, you know enable the second radio. And it's also my SRS button for SRS is something else we're going to talk about in the radios lesson. It's a program that allows you to speak with other human players, and this is COM2. This one is MIDS. It's another type of radio that the Hornet has. The Hornet actually has 4 radios. Um, so yeah, would be like radio 3, if you will. These I don't even use. I don't think. Some of the warbirds, for example, I have these bound to the, for example, the wheel brakes. But yeah, that's kind of my setup. So for that. Moving on to the HODA. So this is my TWCS Thrustmaster HODA throttle. Um, yeah, there you go. So starting here, we got wheel brakes. I click on this and it goes 100% wheel brakes. Probably not the most realistic thing or whatever, but it's worked, and just gotta be careful with it. Tap it. Don't always go in. Um, yeah, you have to be careful on the runway when you're landing. Then we got this little 4-hat switch here. And what I use this for is hook up. Like, I think it's each one of these does one thing. So one is my hook goes up and down. One is my gear goes up and down. The other one is my COM1 menu. So this is the in-game air traffic control or F10 menu, which we're going to talk about in comms again. Which pops up a little menu here in the top right screen, and you can manipulate things in game. And then it's the automatic throttle control engage disengage. So you'll notice, you'll start to see themes, right? So this is all the stuff that I need. For example, when I'm coming to landing on a carrier, hook goes down, gear goes down, stuff like that, right? Um, and then here, right up here, is another four-way. One is for flaps. Up is flap up, down, and forward and back is my brakes, air brakes. Also going to be very useful. This is one of the things I use the most. Um, when I click on the modifier, which is this little red button next to my pinky, that's my modifier that I was talking about. When I click that, all of the buttons on here and everywhere else become a second button kind of deal. So when I click that and I click this, forward and back is my fuel probe going back and forth, and up and down, it's my chaff and flare. That's what it is. Chaff and flare dispense. This one right here is my trim, up, down, left, right. And if I click the modifier and this thing, I have all my NVG controls, such as NVG on, off, brightness up, down, and my taxi light. So you'll see that all my night stuff is here when I click this guy. This thing, I don't use it as it's actually an axis, but I don't use it. This is actually what's supposed to be your TDC control, throttle designator control, which is like that mouse pointer that I talked about, that I have mapped to my stick hand. This is actually the one it's supposed to be, but that's an example of where, hey, I actually don't like using my left pinky in the index finger with this thing. I don't find it as accurate. I like to use my thumb, and I like to use a non-axis but buttons, and so that's a preference thing, right? If I click this, when you can click it, it actually is the cage on cage button, which is not shown here. It's a very important button too. This thing is my radar elevation. It's a two-way thingy. Uh, Click up, goes radar elevation goes up and down. It basically points your radar up and down, if you want to think about it that way. And then it's my FLIR, which is like the little camera on the jet to target, tanks and stuff. It changes the zoom on it, right? And then finally, this one here is my radio 1. So whatever radio I have on radio 1, I click on it on SRS as well, and it goes and it transmits on radio 1. So there you have it. Those are my bindings. As I said, you can use this as an example. Your bindings are going to be different because your hardware might be different, and because you might have different preferences. As I said, um, you know, for example, if you go to, if you're not going to use weapons for the first 40, um, you know, lessons, then you don't need to bind all your weapon stuff, right? But for example, if you radar is going to come up eventually here pretty soon, and you're going to have to bind some of this. So what I would suggest is bind one thing at a time and learn it till it becomes muscle memory. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's figure out how to actually bind these things within a DCS itself. All right, folks, now that we talked about, how I bind, my stick and throttle, what my bindings are, to give you guys an example, right? We're here on the main screen, and so basically you decided, you watched my first lesson, you learn about DCS, you're like, yeah, I want to go become a fighter pilot. Virtual naval aviator, and I want to learn the F-18. So you're like, yep, I looked at the recommendations, I did my research, and I went and bought myself a HOTAS, like a stick and a throttle. I bought myself a Track IR or a VR headset, as I had recommended, one of the other. And you have all your hardware, you have DCS downloaded, you bought yourself the F-18 module, and you are ready to rock and roll. You're like, okay, let's find some keys. You have an idea of what the keys are like, and you're like, okay, let's do this. So what do you do? As we talked about in the menu lesson, you go here to options. Okay, click on options, and then you go to controls. That's the tab that we had skipped last time. Now, on the controls, on the left, you can select your aircraft. It defaults to whatever, like this is the F-18, right? Each of your aircraft are here, and even different models or different seat positions. For example, the Rio, the back seat on an F-14 has different controls than the front seat. So you select your aircraft here, and for each aircraft, each of the controls is different. Okay, so you can't just have one set of controls for all aircraft, which probably makes sense because a helicopter has different controls than a jet, but you will probably use the same HOTAS. Next to it is basically the all of these bindings are listed into groups, right? So this will help you like systems or throttle grip or things like that. So if you want to go and search it by category, you go and click here and it will like dispenser. I click on dispenser. This is all the dispenser related keybinds. What I end up doing is just go search, and if I say gear, this is all the landing gear related controls, right? And that's typically the most common way you're gonna set things up. You're gonna search for it here because you don't want to deal with all the different things, right? So let's get that. Then looking here, it says reset category, clear all, load profile, and save profile. I should probably save profiles. I don't think I've ever have because I've always used the one the one HOTAS. But yeah, if you click here, you can also click on this little button on next to each column, and it says clear category, reset to defaults. You can save and so on and so forth. The most common thing you will use here is clear category, and it clears the whole column. So all of that column goes away. So that's that. Here in the columns themselves, this is the action, this is the category. When you have This is the keyboard, so these are the keyboard bindings, and you can change all of these. For example, aircraft rudder left is Z, but as we said, I don't use that. So unless I'm like munching on something and having like yeah, no, I'm not going to use the keyboard. But anyways, these are the controls, the standard controls for keyboard. If you want to change one, you click on the column and then you go change it. This is my stick. So here is if you click on the column, and then if I want to change something on my stick, like for example, what's my first thing here is the autopilot. So I will go here and I would go and do that, right? And this is the throttle, and this is the mouse. Those are my four controls: mouse, throttle, stick, keyboard. There you go. At the bottom, you have this thing called modifiers, which is what I talked about. Here's my joystick button 2. Remember that little one next to the pinky? Um, this is, you can set this up. You can set all the other ones, like right shift, left shift, whatever. You can have any button be a modifier, and it becomes a modifier. So it's great to see. All of this stuff you don't really need to know about except axis assign and axis tune. So we're gonna get there. I guess let's start there, huh? Axis assign. So these are basically everything that could have an axis, and it's where you want to get started. And then axis tune is where you could tune some of these things. So let's go and look at the most basic axis. So for example, rudder is my twist axis on my Gladiator right now, right? And for example, I don't want it to be anything on my throttle, so if you wanted to clear that, I would right click and say clear combo. Thrust is definitely on my throttle, and I don't want it on my Gladiator, so I would go here and clear that one. Rudder is on my stick, so that's good. Roll is also on my stick. Pitch is on my stick, right? So if I click here, you basically go and you can assign like I guess like a button to it, right? So and sorry, not an axis, not a button. So what you do is like you would so like here, and you see this little white lines as I move. I'm currently moving my stick. So if I go up, down, that's my pitch. If I go left, right, twist left, right, that's my rudder. If I roll my stick left and right, that's my roll. And all you do is you double click, and then you like double click, and then you move your whatever axis, and it will detect it, and you say okay. That's as simple as it is. As I said, I have only 3 axes, and that's it. And then the mouse is by default also bound, and the throttle only has this axis here. When it comes to helicopters, you want to reverse some of these things so that, for example, on my helicopters, I reverse the axes so that when I pull, it actually pulls on the collective, you know, and it's the reverse. You go up instead of when pushing to go up. Now, if I click, for example, one thing that is recommended, especially for formation flying and things like that, is let's say your roll is like too sensitive, and then you go to axis tune. You know, you click on the axis like the roll, then you go to axis tune. And what you do is you can have a dead zone, which is at which point does your stick start actually doing anything. So right now it's at 0. I can make like this, means like if I move, when I move my stick, it's not gonna do anything, and then boom, it starts doing something, right? So right now it's 0. Saturation is like, you know, this is my roll axis, by the way. So I go right, it's gonna go crazy rolling with almost no movement, and then it's gonna do nothing. If I do saturation 100%, it's just the default. You go right, I'm rolling, 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 and it's just a steady curve. Saturation Y is just the other direction, and the curvature. So, and then the other thing you can do is like invert. So, you know, if I roll right, this is actually gonna roll left. I'm not sure why you do that on the throttle, right? But it was just an example, you know. Here I roll right, and actually goes right. And so yeah, that's how you would set up the sensitivity of your controls, which you want to play around with and just get a feel for it. It does help so that you can fine-tune your flying better. Okay. All right. Now we talked about the axes. We can go to here. So again, uh, so let's say you want to start setting up your Hornet. You're on the ground. What's one of the first things you want to set up? Well, brakes, right? So you go wheel. You know, okay, I want my wheel brake. So wheel brake on and off is the keybind that you want. W is by default on your keyboard, but you want it on the joystick. So remember, on my joystick, I had said that it was on the my little thumb, right? It was one of the buttons. And yeah, I mean, you know, as I said, you go here, you click on your thumb thing, and it detects it, and you say okay, and then that becomes your thing. So that's your wheel brake. The next thing would be okay. Some things I just don't bind, like canopy. You know, you remember rough control C uh, right here, and it's close and open your canopy. That's what I use. I don't bind that stuff. The taxi light, remember I had bound that. That's here. So it has a modifier. This is what that looks like. Actually, it doesn't look like anything right now, but basically here are all your joystick buttons and then your modifiers. But yeah, that's how you select it. So um, you choose your modifier and which button you want it to be, and this combination, when you hit it, will turn on your taxi light on and off. You know, flaps, very important. Flap. So here's all my, you know, flap buttons. So here we have flap switch down, flap switch up, right? Um, and I guess with each lesson I will go here and show which controls are needed for that particular lessons, and that's all I'm gonna say. Then you can go and bind it as per this video, right? And as per the suggestion. So each lesson I will try to remember to say, okay, I'm gonna use flaps today and air brake. So your flaps, you click, this is what you need to bind these two. Then I'll say, okay, air brakes. I go brake. So speed brake is what they're called, right? So speed brake extend is this guy, speed brake retract is this guy. There you go, and that's the wheel brake. So these are the three things. And I'll say, oh, we need this. And that's it, guys. It does seem overwhelming at first, but really, once you search for things, it's extremely easy to use. You just double click, you move your thing, or you press the button, and then you say OK, and it saves it. If you want to clear it, you right click, and then you see clear combo, and it does it. If there's a conflict, I'm pretty sure it deletes the other one, but if it doesn't, you just have to go back to both and delete the one that you want to delete, just to make sure. But I think it does it automatically. Anyways, that's how you set up your bindings. And as I said in the lessons, um, I'm gonna show you what that's gonna look like. And I think congratulations, because if you've stuck it for this long, or up to this lesson, uh, we are over the boring part, I think. But boring but important, right? So by now you should start setting up your joystick. Um, take mine as an example. Set up your joystick, or maybe wait for that first lesson. Sorry, that first the cold start, or the next lesson, I guess, to help set up or wherever you're gonna use it. Um, but if you wanna, yeah, that's what I recommend. So in the next lesson, what we're gonna do is go over the introduction of the Hornet, and then the lesson after that is cold start, and I'm pretty sure the one after that is no, actually no, the next one is mission editor. What am I talking about? Yeah, no, just one more. So we still have one more. And the next lesson is to go over the mission editor. It's very important, and I'll explain why. But we will get into the air soon enough, I promise. But trust me, guys and gals. Um, I had mentioned this in the beginning of the course. We're going to take this one step at a time so that you understand everything fully before going to the next step. Trust me, all of this stuff will be useful later on. So, hope you enjoyed this lesson. Hope it clarified how to set up your bindings in DCS. And as I said, there's like 1,000 videos out there that talk about bindings. I'm not saying this is the video to watch, but at least I've covered it with my flair to it. And I hope you learned something from it. Um, and we can move on to the next lesson and to more bigger and more fun things. So thanks again, everyone. I hope that more and more people are joining in this journey, and I hope to see you guys all in the skies and in the next video. Let's go and learn some more things. All right. Thanks, everyone, and see you in the next lesson.